The ancient world is full of famous warriors, men who have written themselves into history with their deeds of arms and military genius. But what about their four-legged companions? While history remembers many heroes, it also remembers one loyal dog. One war dog who followed his master Alexander the Great to nearly every battle of his empire. He saved the king's life at least once and even accompanied him into the great beyond. This was Peritas, the one and only dog of Alexander the Great. And this is our channel. Today we tell stories of the 20th and 11th centuries BC. The further back we go, the more mythical the history becomes. But we try our best to separate fact from fiction. So if you like stories of legendary beasts and heroes of old, stay tuned for more. Alexander the Great was born in Pella, the capital of the Kingdom of Macedon, in 356 BCE. His father, King Philip II of Macedon, had conquered most of Greece by the time of Alexander's birth. Uniting it under one banner, after decades of fighting between independent city-states, it would seem that the young prince was destined for a life of luxury. And yet he was born with an untamable spirit. Instead of being interested in the finer things in life, Alexander wanted to be a warrior. Fortunately for him, his father was happy to foster this desire. Philip hired the renowned philosopher Aristotle to tutor his son. But the lessons went beyond the books. The royal family kept a small menagerie of exotic animals, and young Alexander would spend hours watching the lions and other beasts being trained by Juba, an expert in animal training. When he was 14, Philip let Alexander accompany him on a campaign to get a first-hand look at warfare. Little did the king know that this experience would inspire his son to take over his empire one day and conquer the known world. From then on, Alexander insisted on learning more about military strategy and tactics from his father and spent hours practicing with weapons. By the age of 16, he was an accomplished swordsman and could ride a horse like a god of the wind. By 336 BCE, Philip had expanded his kingdom all the way to the borders of the Persian Empire. The next step was to cross the Hellespont and invade Asia Minor. However, before Philip could set out on this campaign, he was assassinated by one of his bodyguards. This left the throne to Alexander, now just 20 years old. The new king wasted no time in asserting his authority and marched against the assassins in the city of Susa. There he cemented his power by marrying two of his father's widows and taking his favorite Roxana as his primary wife. In the following year, Alexander finally began his campaign against the Persians. He led his army through Thrace and camped near the river Granicus. That's where he got the news that some Persian satraps were gathering troops to block his path to the east. So Alexander prepared for war. It was here that we see the first account of Peritas. Plutarch wrote that when the Macedonian cavalry crossed the river to scout for the enemy, a dog came running across the bank, jumping up on Perdiccas's horse and licking his face. Overjoyed, the general thought it was a good omen and rode back to tell Alexander. Of course, the king was delighted by the visit from the dog, which seemed to be an auspicious sign. But Plutarch notes that since then, the dog has become a regular sight around the camp, showing up every day at around the same hour. Every time it would jump up on his chariot and bark furiously at his charioteers until they stopped. Then the dog would climb down, trot ahead of Alexander, and lie down in front of his tent. So Alexander took the dog in as a pet and named him Peritas, which means companion or equal. Peritas' breed was believed to have been a Molossian hound. This ancient breed was known for its large size, strength, and loyalty, traits that aligned with Alexander's own character. Surely such a fact would have appeared in the historical accounts if it were accurate. Rather, based on the fact that he could easily jump up on a chariot, historians believe that Peritas was probably a medium-sized dog, possibly a hound or a herding breed. These types of dogs are quite intelligent and easy to train, which made them excellent war dogs. Not only could they carry messages and herd animals, but they could also pull small carts and chariots and serve as watchdogs. It seems likely that Peritas came from a long line of war dogs bred by the Macedonians for their military campaigns. They may have been descendants of ancient Mesopotamian war dogs brought to Greece during the Persian Wars, or they could be related to the famous Molossus, a large and ferocious war dog originating from Epirus, another region of Greece. Fortunately, we don't know much about these ancient canines, but archaeologists have uncovered evidence of dog burials in Macedonia. Dating back to the 8th century BCE, this suggests that dogs played an important role in Macedonian society, and were valued not only as working animals, but also as companions. However, Peritas was no ordinary dog, and soon everyone at the Macedonian camp knew his name. During the Battle of the River Granicus, Peritas saved Alexander's life. According to Plutarch, the Macedonian king was almost captured by a Persian noble named Spithridates. As Alexander fought against him, Peritas jumped in and bit the man in the leg. Startled by the sudden pain, Spithridates dropped his sword and fell to the ground. The dog then barked furiously at him until help arrived. Taken by surprise and overwhelmed by the tenacious little beast, the Persians fled, leaving the battlefield to the Macedonians. After winning the battle, Alexander treated his heroic dog with a special dog biscuit called oxycrispisma, given to him by one of his admirers. From that day forward, people throughout the empire gave Peritas treats whenever they saw him. Even though Peritas was a brave and fearless dog, he never seemed to grow tired of receiving pets and kind words from the soldiers. Following the battle, Alexander continued his campaign against the Persians and won decisive victories at the battles of Issus and Gaugamela. Along the way, he and Peritas grew old together. But despite his advanced age, the dog still went with Alexander everywhere and waited patiently outside his tent while he met with dignitaries. However, at the siege of the ancient city of Tyre, Peritas didn't make it. The city stood defiantly on an island off the coast of modern Lebanon, protected by the sea on one side and steep cliffs on the other three. Alexander built a road from the mainland to the island to bring his heavy siege engines closer to the city walls. But even so, the citizens of Tyre resisted for 7 months. Desperate for a solution, Alexander offered them a deal. If they surrendered, their lives and property would be spared. But when the sun set that night, he ordered his men to light their catapults and battering rams and attack the city. Tyre was overwhelmed, and its inhabitants were forced to surrender. But as punishment for their resistance, Alexander ordered that the city be sacked and the people put to the sword. However, as he walked through the streets of the fallen city, he came across a temple dedicated to the god Apollo, which had not been damaged during the fighting. Inside, he saw a statue of the god that reminded him of his own. He felt a pang of remorse for ordering the massacre and regretted what he had done. To console himself, he sacrificed a white bull to Apollo, promising to honor the god wherever he went. He then ordered that all the women and children be freed, and that the male prisoners be taken to the harbor to be sold as slaves. But as he approached the harbor, something unexpected happened. A dog ran out from between the ships and ran toward him. It was old and thin, with matted fur and a limp. But as it got closer, Alexander realized that it was Peritas. The dog had been missing for weeks, and Alexander had assumed that he had died. But there he was, alive and well, tail wagging, trying to get his master's attention. Alexander was overjoyed to see his faithful companion again, and immediately ordered that food be brought for him. But before he could eat, Peritas looked up at him and whined sadly. Then he turned and trotted away. Alexander followed him to a nearby temple, where the dog lay down and died. Grief-stricken, the king ordered that the dog be mummified and buried beside him in a golden coffin. When Alexander died in 323 BCE at the age of 32, his empire crumbled into civil war. His body was taken to Alexandria in Egypt, where it was embalmed and placed in a tomb. According to legend, Peritas' mummy was brought there too, although we don't know exactly where he was buried or if his remains survive to this day. One thing is clear: Alexander the Great's legacy wouldn't be complete without his brave war dog at his side. Together, they fought and conquered, bringing Macedonia to the peak of its power and spreading Greek culture across the known world. And though Alexander is remembered as a brilliant military strategist, he would have been the first to admit that none of it would have been possible without his trusty companion, Peritas, the one and only dog of Alexander the Great. What did you think of the story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos of legendary beasts and heroes of the old. Thanks for watching.